This is dry cow dung, and this is one of the raw material that is used in vermiculture. After a few days, once the worms have been introduced, this is the end product which you get. This is compost, very useful, very nutritious for your food production. Well, that is to welcome you in this section where George is practicing vermiculture. He will be educating us more about this particular innovation.
So now this is our vermiculture system where we are able to raise the worms for various reasons. One is vermicomposting, which we are also doing here. Also breeding more worms to sell to farmers or either to use as chicken feeds. But mainly we have avoided using it as chicken feeds because it's not really commercially viable. But using it now for our vermicomposting purposes and also breeding more to sell to other farmers. So currently we have 14 stands which carries 42 beds. Each bed has about 5 to 8 kgs of worms, which now compost the manure, the cow manure. We use various items as cow manure, plant remains or fruit waste. So they feed on that, they break that down within a period of 45-60 days, it's ready. And now we can come here and start sieving, separating the worms, the fine manure and the uncomposted manure, which we return back to the system. So the reason as to why we have been able to rise, we started with, initially I started with one bed about 8 years ago. So I developed about 2.5 years ago, we came up with 12 beds. But then recently now we have been able now to reach up to 42 beds. And the reason as to why it's because the demand for the vermicompost and also for the worms has been rising year by year. As we evaluate, it's because farmers have started to being more conscious on what they are using, the synthetic fertilizers, which has been killing the soil slowly. But now using the vermicompost, it's reverting that. Now we see soils being more active, getting more produce, being more safe in a way that we don't use a lot of chemicals or to spray when we are using the vermicompost. So that is why the business has been able to rise more, because now the demand for the compost also is rising in a big way. Initially we say, or I advise one to, before even you start doing the structuring and all that, go somewhere and run, because now you will be told what to do with the worms, what to expect, how to manage the worms, how to make sure they are safe all through. Then now from then, after having that in mind, you can be able to set different systems. Because now, like in my case, I have done these structures because they are the best which suits this area. You can go into another area, you can do a different structure depending on the conditions around that area. So once one is able to understand that, now they can do the structures, then now they can get the worms and start. Because now once you do the structuring and all that, you have the raw materials, you can now introduce the worms and give them time to first grow or regenerate. Then now you can now start harvesting your compost. So the worms mostly likes a cool environment. They like it when their bed or their structure is moist but not wet, not dry, so a bit moist, so that they can be able to feed on that, break it down. Then now we also, as we can be able to harvest it easily, because if we feed the worms and leave the bed to be wet in a way, we may not be able to come and harvest the compost within the 45 or 2 months as we expect. So we have to look at those conditions. Then worms do not like it warm or hot in the bed, because once it gets to be hot, it will start killing the worms. We say temperatures, when they rise beyond 25 degrees, they'll start killing the worms. When they get below 15 degrees, the worms will start freezing. They won't be active, so they won't work on the compost. So we have to look at those conditions. Also, we look at the acidity. You don't feed them on acidic materials. Then we also look at challenges to do with predators and all that. Once we are able to manage all that, now we can be able now to produce the compost easily. We used to do our harvesting inside here. Then now once we did the full house in terms of the structuring, so we had nowhere to do our harvesting. So we just did this to prepare an area where we can be doing our harvesting of the compost. And also it's a good structure because now the sun is protected at a certain percentage. Then so if we harvest our compost and it's not really dry as well as it is required, we can keep it here. It will dry comfortably without the nutrients going with the sun. So mainly we have been selling our compost to organic farmers. Those are our biggest market. Then we have a number of seedlings propagators. Also we have farmers who do balcony farming. So those are the biggest clients that we have been serving. And we sell our compost at 70 shillings per kg. So here we have the structures that we have at the moment. Initially we were doing 1 ton per month of the structures. We have a capacity of producing 4 to 5 tons of compost every month. And here we have different sieves that we are using. Initially we have been using this manual sieve, which was a bit tedious because we had to shake for us to get now the fine compost. The worms would remain on top. Then we have this finer sieve, which normally we use as the second sieve. Once we harvest the worms, or we separate the worms and the compost, we come now with this. We separate the worms and the compost. Now we come in with the second sieve, which is a bit finer. We can be able now to sieve the compost. We separate the fine compost and the eggs of the worms so that we can return the worms or the eggs back to the system. But recently we have been trying to come up with a simpler way of sieving, because now we have more compost to sieve. It's also a bit manual, but a little bit more easy to use, and it will even sieve more compost than we have been doing previously. So previously we would do about 2 beds in a day, but now with this we can do even 3-4 beds in a day. And so we'll be able to harvest more, and it will even be easier for the one who will be working on it. It won't be that tedious. So agriculture for me, I say it's my livelihood, because everything that I do, because it's the main thing that I do. And I have been able to see some developments in my life that has come out of it. Also, I have been able to do different projects, mainly from the vermiculture and vermicomposting part. It's the one I started with. It has developed, getting now into the pigs, the black soldier fly, the azora. So it has been developing, and also it has helped me to impact other people's lives. I work with the youth. I'm able to give employments to a number of guys. So it's something that is good. It has been working in my life. It has developed different things. So I would encourage the youth to take up and to work and to look into the different structures or different value chains of the agriculture, and they can be able to chip in or to work somewhere and develop their own lives.
Thank you so much for keeping it here. That is all we had time for on today's episode of Youth in Agriculture. And I believe that you've learned quite a lot on azolla farming and vermicomposting. If you have a story that you want to share with us, let us know through the SMS code on your screen. But until next time, enjoy the rest of our programming.